Good morning. Oh, let's try that a little bit. I know it's cold out, but the sun is out there, and you were just all chatting so vibrantly. Good morning. There we go. Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Society of Bangor. I'm Reverend Drew Moeller, and we are so glad that you are joining us either here in the sanctuary this morning or live on Zoom. Today is a very special Sunday because it's a Sunday that we welcome two new members to our midst and recognize two other members who joined since our last time. So a total of 4 new people have joined our community since our last new member Sunday. So we've got a lot to do. But before we get started, I want to invite Sue McKay, who has volunteered to help out as a worship associate this morning, to come forward and offer some announcements.
Good morning, everyone. I want to remind people about the second Sunday food collection, the one we just had last week. We collected over 202 pounds of food. So those of you who participated, thank you, and those who didn't, second Sunday next month. Fundraisers, out at the table in the Dorothy Memorial Hall, it's one-stop shopping. We have everything. We have tickets and ticket packets for people to pick up to sell. This is our biggest fundraiser, so please go to the sign that says Imagine Raffle and pick up raffle tickets to sell, and if you want to buy some just on your own, that's fine too. Wreaths need to be pre-ordered if possible, and you can do that out at the table as well. You would see me for that, for pre-order of wreaths. They are going to be put together and they are going to be sold on December 3rd. You can pick them up ideally between 10 and 12. And if there's any left over after that, we will have them for sale from 12 to 2. Other fundraisers that we have going on, the grocery cards. If you shop at Hannaford, please do it with our grocery cards. The church makes money, it's easy for you, and it works well for everybody. The UU Common read that is going to be happening is Mistakes and Miracles by Nancy Palmer Jones and Karen Lynn. And the person to see for information on that is Lori Cartier. I thought I saw her here this morning. She may be out in the kitchen helping out there. The books are $22. People read this book and then there's a conversation about it. So it's a good time for all. We have a new COVID policy. You may have seen it on e-news, but just in case you didn't, I'm going to quickly read through it. In general, we will rely on personal responsibility as to the precautions attendees use to protect themselves and their family members against COVID, flu, RSV, etc. Protections such as mask wearing and social distancing should be respected for those who choose that path. Each staff member will determine the protocols for their programs. Karen for SEE, Molly for choir, and Christine and Drew for time spent in the office. UUSB will attempt to keep fresh supplies of hand sanitizer available. If you see an empty container, say something so it can be addressed as soon as possible. For your information, we will now post in the e-news the link to the CDC site so members and friends can check the current risk level if they wish. Today, we are in the green. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue, for that energetic listing of announcements. And so with all those things going on, it is a busy time of year. We are getting ready for a lot going on, and let it be joyous goings on. So with that said, let's all just take a moment to take a couple deep breaths. Come in to this space. Sense the energy that is present. Look around and look at the familiar faces. Think about the familiar voices. And think about the time when you first walked into this sanctuary and the greeting and the welcome that you received. As we now move into our time of worship together, let us be reminded that everyone is welcome here, just as you are. Thank you, choir, for that rousing and intricate piece. I'm now going to invite Sue to come forward to offer our chalice lighting.
Lighting the chalice this morning, we have Vivian. She has come down from the frozen north. Come into this place which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and are called to be. Come into this place where we can touch and be touched, heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this place. Together we make it a holy place. And if it's getting lit, blessed be. Thank you, Vivian. The opening hymn is number 361. The words will be on the screen. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
Song
So that was rousing. That was a good energy start. And this morning, most of our young people have gone to a field trip to the Penobscot Nation, and they're going to be doing, I think, some digging in the ground and planting or something like that. So that's why we're a little smaller group today. So welcome to our young people who are joining us over in the corner here. We're glad you are here. Our theme this month is change, and so I selected this story titled Things Will Change. Once a man fell on hard times. First, he lost his job, and then he could no longer keep up with the payments on his home. Then his wife left and took the children with her, and he fell into very deep despair. Then one day he heard of a very wise sage who lived far away over the sea and over the mountains in far off India. He decided to seek out the wisdom of this wise sage and ask this sage for counsel. And so this individual journeyed for many, many long weeks over the sea, over the mountains, up the river valleys, until at very long last he arrived at the dwelling of the wise old sage. This man told the sage of his story, and the sage sat there and listened very carefully, quietly. And then he looked into the eyes of this man and pronounced his wisdom. He said, "Things will change." That was it. Feeling a little dissatisfied by this very vague answer, the man went all the way back home, down the valleys, over the mountains, and across the sea. Time passed, and the winds of fortune did change. The man found a new job. He saved enough money to move into an apartment. He started working on repairing the relationship between his wife and his children. They were all very happy again. And he remembered the words of the sage. Surely he was absolutely right. How did he know that? And so the man decided that in gratitude he was going to go back and thank the sage. So he set out for a second time across the ocean, over the mountains, up and down the river valleys, until finally reaching the dwelling of the sage. Delighted with his renewed fortune, he recounted to the sage all the wonderful things that had happened, all the things that were going right. Indeed, everything had changed. The sage sat there with a smile and quietly listened, and at the end looked into the eyes of the stranger and pronounced his wisdom once more. Things will change, right? Yeah. And I think that's things change in our lives quite regularly. It feels lately like it happens or changes every time the news cycle changes. And I think that there's a way that it can be fatiguing. It can also be helpful. And I know at times when I am struggling and feeling a little bit like that man who is going through a lot of hardship, that taking a couple deep breaths and reminding myself that things will change. Things will change. It's not going to be the same that it is now. And so we will, our challenge is to be able to sit and be present and sometimes just hang on until the next thing changes. So that's our story for this morning. And since our young people are away, and if you are up here, we're not going to sing, I think, down to yeah, unless you want to. Please join me in the spirit of meditation and prayer. Great universal Spirit, interconnected web of which we are a part, we gather in this time and place to hold up the joys and sorrows that make up the experiences and the wisdom of our lives. We hold those difficult pieces of wisdom of saying goodbye to loved ones who have passed, to being present to those among us who are infirm and ill and struggling with disease and medical conditions. We also hold those in our midst who are getting the treatment that they need for support of their health and mental health. May they continue to be supported and not feel alone. We give thanks for people with caring hearts who offer to welcome people in for Thanksgiving or for turkey dinners. And we celebrate the birth of new life in our midst. Through the struggles of being a new mom and being laid off at a very difficult time of year, not that there's ever a good time to be laid off. And we hold in our hearts with remembrance people with transgender identities who have been persecuted, who have suffered greatly, and their families in the last year. May we continue to work for inclusion and making sure that we create safe space for all people and acceptance of all people as they are. Spirit, we are grateful to this community, a place where we can bring these stories, even when we feel vulnerable, into a blessed space where we can share them and we can learn from each other's experiences and join each other in their happiness and their sorrow. We do this because we know that each life tells an important story, and each life holds a deep and abiding truth. By coming together and holding up these joys and sorrows together, we grow closer to becoming one. Blessed be. Amen.
Next, we have the offertory.
gratitude that we receive this morning's offering, and just to let you know that half of what we collect today will be shared with Penquist CAP fuel assistance for this coming winter. So, thank you.
The reading this morning may be familiar to a lot of you. It's the UUSB Congregational Covenant. This is what we say we stand for. We are a welcoming, inclusive, progressive community of spiritual seekers of all ages. We gather to reflect on the big questions, nourish our souls, steadfastly support each other through hard times, and joyfully celebrate life. We commit to living our principles by treating each other and the greater community with genuine loving kindness, by listening intently, and by speaking our truth with compassion. We are guided by our commitment to the earth and all of its inhabitants. Through our service, we work to transform the world into a place of unity, peace, and justice. Blessed be.
I always smile when I hear those words and remember, I think it was at 2019 that we all gathered together. We spent almost a year creating that covenant together. And it's beautiful and simple and very true. So with that, we are now going to go into our new member ritual. It's, if you have the folded program, it doesn't show up on there. There's a little fiasco with getting the stuff there, but to help out with welcoming our new members through our celebration here, I'm going to invite Kathy Elliott from our membership fellowship team to come forward. And I need to find the tablet so I've got my words.
Test. Okay. So I would like to ask Jim Shimko and Ron Brousseau to please join us. It's not on? Oh, I need to be more intentional. If you want to just come on over here. Great, thank you. So we are pleased to welcome 4 new members to our church today. They have joined since last April, the last time we did this. 2 of them, Michael Scott and Gemma Peretta Scott, weren't able to join us today, so we'll have to welcome them another time in person. But today we have Jim and Ron with us. So I'd like to introduce them to you by telling you a little bit about them. So Jim wrote, I enjoy participating as an SEE teacher. What a wonderful way to learn. I also enjoy working with the spiritual drumming group. I believe that through the arts we can grow as a spiritual community. With spiritual drumming, we grow both spiritually and musically. My son, Hiroshi, enjoys participating in the SEE program. He plays classical harp and piano. We enjoy swimming, biking, music, festivals, and travel. Welcome, Jim. Ron Brousseau. Ron is from Maine, most recently living in Waterville before coming to Bangor. Ron first came to UUSB for a short while in 2017. So when he was looking for a spiritual home and place to learn, he came to UUSB again, enjoying that we are close to where he is living. We're happy that Ron has chosen to stay and join our community. We welcome each of you to membership in this community of faith. It is our purpose to recognize and care for each other and to explore the spiritual pathways that call to us, alone and together, to reach out in service to the wider human community. We gather freely and inclusively welcoming and valuing the rich diversity among us.
We are grateful for these two people joining us today as our newest active members of our beloved community. Both of them are people who have known this community for a little while before they decided to make the decision to join. They have spent time with us both online and coming back after we closed for COVID. And I'll add that Ron was one of those people who checked in with me regularly to say, when are we going to be back? When are we going to be back? I'm going to be there on the first day. So dear Jim and Ron, it is with great excitement that we salute you as new members of this beloved community. We know that it takes courage to make such a commitment, and we are joyous about the commitment that you have made and are taking up the mantle of membership here at Unitarian Universalist Society of Bangor. Becoming a member here is both simple and difficult. In signing this book, you have claimed that UUSB is your spiritual home, a place for celebration and contemplation, a place for service and for searching. The members and friends of this congregation invite you to challenge and to nurture us, to speak to us honestly and compassionately, and to live with us in integrity and respond to the demands of life with justice and courage and faith.
Thank you for being here and being willing to sign our membership book. It takes courage to say yes, to trust a new community, to take you in, to love you in your uniqueness, and to challenge you to become something more than you have ever been. Your gifts are a priceless addition to our religious home. Will you join the life of this congregation, giving and receiving the gifts of beloved community?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Good answer. Our new members will now sign our membership book, each of them signing of their own free will. They also agree to work together within this community and to abide by our congregational bylaws, policies, and covenants.
Mm-hmm.
Sign beside your name.
Dear Jim and Ron, as our newest members, I've had the privilege of getting to know you each just a little bit, maybe. And we have learned as we have learned from your wonderful bios, that each of you brings with you your own talents and skills, experience, passions, and perspectives. Each of you brings their own reasons for joining this beloved community. One thing that I am grateful to have heard from both of you is how welcome this community has made you feel, and we are excited that you have chosen to join our congregation this morning, and we welcome your commitment to making this community a warm and welcoming place for all. To the rest of the congregation, I want to say it is also a very happy celebration for all of us, because it is through our combined efforts of radical hospitality that we have made this congregation such a vital place. It is no wonder that others wish to become part of this beloved community that we have created together. We are excited to have new members joining us, especially in the midst of all the crazy things going on in the world right now. This community is renewed and rejuvenated by the joining of new members. So now I'm going to invite the congregation to rise in body or in spirit as we formally welcome these two new members into our congregation. And if we can step back just a little bit, so people in the choir, you might need to step up so you can see the words that we're going to read together. As we welcome new members, it is time for each of us to remember our own beginnings in this community. That helped us through the door, the people who smiled, who asked our names, who listened when we told them who we were. And so, as with greet new members, we extend our hands to you and we honor your courage as we welcome you aboard. Dear congregational members, will you help these new members find the joy and comfort that you have found here? Shake your hands. Will you make room for their contributions and support their spiritual growth? Yes. All right. So now let's read the second part of our congregational welcome. We welcome you into membership in the Unitarian Universalist Society of Bangor. Thank you for joining this community. Through your faith and your questions, we grow stronger as a congregation. Through your gifts and your energy, our possibilities multiply and our tasks grow lighter. Through the dreams that you cherish and your hope for a better world, our days become brighter and our vision renewed. Welcome. We are glad you are here. And let us raise our hands and make a joyful noise. And we have some gift baskets here, one for each, with a new membership card in there. So welcome. Hugs?
Thank you, brother.
Great. Great, great. Thank you, thank you. And now you can grab a seat and relax. And now let's enjoy the spirit of the energy here in the room with some music from our choir.
And this is called a place in the choir, and everyone has a place in the choir. Just say it. Join us.
Some sing higher, some sing out loud on the telephone.
Thank you, thank you. That was fun, enjoyable. Nice to be a little goofy and silly sometimes too. So, our story of all ages reminds us that despite our best planning and efforts, that things do change. They will change. One of the ways that we continue to grow and thrive as a spiritual community is through all the things that are happening around us is welcoming new members. Just as the unfolding of the universe with all sorts of interesting twists and turns like climate change and COVID and political perspectives and ideology, everything changes, or so it seems. Yet the very nature of our humanness is about trying to create certainty as much as possible. If not certainty, at least predictability, yes? We hope that when things seem to be we're hopeful when things seem to be going our way, and other times when we hear news reports like the one this morning from Colorado Springs and the hate crime that was committed last night on the Transgender Day of Remembrance, we are left with fear that change is not going in a very good way. Our ancestors many years ago were part of the change that challenged the status quo, that called for religious freedom and for freedom of thought and the expression as a means of working for change as it came, instead of trying to restrict or enforce norms on people who were intolerant, unjust, people who wanted to stifle growth and thriving of the human spirit. Harms of limiting social mobility and implementing rigid systems of exploitation, abuse, and privilege for the few. Theologies that said one person was better than another and justified in all sorts of heinous crimes and abuse. Still, there is something hopeful in the overall human spirit that speaks to us again and again and again about equality and justice and the willingness to work to grow to make the world a more predictably fair and supportive place for all people. I feel like it is something in this community that we are doing well, although we are not always perfect. I don't know why, but sometimes I have these interesting associations, and so one of the things that talking about this reminds me of is one of my favorite jokes that talks a little bit about challenges and unpredictability and striving to be a spiritual being. It's a two-parter, and it goes a little like this. Once a student studying spirituality had lived a very rigid and limiting life. The student had just finished a week-long retreat in Chicago and was back out on the street again, ready to head home. But it was a beautiful summer day, and so the student decided to just go for a walk in the park. After a very pleasant stroll, the student started to became hungry, and so they stopped at a hot dog stand to get some lunch. The student approached the vendor and said, "Oh, those hot dogs smell so lovely. I've been in a retreat for the last week exploring new spiritual ways of being open to new experiences and experiencing change. It has been quite a fantastic experience. This is my first meal outside of that retreat. The retreat was amazing, and I feel like a whole new person. The world seems much more open and a much more friendlier place." The vendor, not quite sure how to respond to all this outpouring of positive energy, said, "Oh, okay. What do you want on your hot dog?" Being open to the newness of possibilities from the spiritual retreat, the student, of course, replied with, oh, I'll have one with everything, right? That's the first part. The second part is the student took a bite of that hot dog that was almost an orgasmic experience, that Chicago-style hot dog, biting into that for the first time. The student dug into their wallet and pulled out a $50 bill and handed it to the vendor. The vendor then made the hot dog, or put the money away, and the hot dog was such an incredible experience. The student turned around and just started walking away, but all of a sudden realized that they hadn't received their money back for the $50, for a hot dog. It was a lot. So the student turned around and walked back to the vendor. "Do you want another hot dog?" the vendor asked. The student said, "No, I came back for my change. I gave you a $50 bill, right?" "Ah," said the vendor, "but you told me that you were a deeply spiritual person who had just attended a retreat and had discovered advanced understanding of being open to change and trying new things." "Yes," replied the student, "that is true." He didn't realize that he had actually been listening. But what does that have to do with me getting my money back?" "Well," said the vendor, "didn't they tell you in the retreat that true change comes from within?" "What?" said the student. "Yes, we talked about all sorts of ways to be present to change, but what does that have to do with getting the money back that you owe me?" "Silly student, don't you know? Change is really that comes from within." And with that, the hot dog vendor turned around and started walking down the street in the opposite direction. I like this story because it sounds a little silly, but also real and practical in some ways. That sometimes as spiritual beings, we move into living life in a very different sort of way that don't always fit the norms or the ways that other people see the world. And that's why it's so important for us to be able to be in a beloved community so that we can help ourselves look at these experiences, see some of these awkward things that we experience in life with a little bit of grace and humor and reflection, even as we need to spend time mourning or being sad or frustrated with some of the current situations. So we hope that our new members feel that same love and connection that we do here. We hope that they will challenge us and not trick us with little things like what change means or does not mean, but that we welcome them. We welcome new ideas, that we have patterns, ways that we are so used to doing sometimes. And I think that since I've been here, especially through all the changes that we've been through in the last 2 years or so, a lot of change, that the more that we listen to each other and reflect with each other and speak our truth, we move through these challenges that we face in the world. We do grow closer to becoming one, and we nourish ourselves and each other in a way that I think is special, is truly special in our world today. And speaking of wonderful ways of doing things that are special, I'm now going to invite Sue McKay to come forward to offer our song, our welcoming song to our new folks. This is a song that she refers to as the ditty and goes along to the tune of "This Land Is Your Land." Sue, you want to give any other introduction to that?
Okay, how many people know the ditty? All right, I want you to sing it nice and loud so the people that don't know the ditty will then know the ditty. This church is your church, this church is my church, from the chiming tower to the one with the hour, from the sanctuary church was made for you and me. This church is your church. This church is my church. From the chiming tower to the one with the hour. From the sanctuary to our very own Dorothy. This church was made for you and me. Welcome, Jim and Ron.
As we extinguish our Unitarian Universalist chalice flame, symbol of faith, hope, love, connection, and our willingness to embrace change even when it is challenging, let us be reminded that although our time of worship has come to an end, our service to each other and to the world has just begun. Nope, I'm just drafting you. I do this randomly.
Thank you, Drew. Oh, see, it just falls out. It burns for a lifetime and more.
There we go. I now invite you to rise and join in singing our benediction.
Let us go forth into the week ahead, striving to be faithful to our life's journeys, serving the needs